Hi, everyone. This is Kumar Datatrain with Agile Meridian, and we're here for our first session talking about the XSCALE framework. And with me today is Glenn Marshall. We're both stewards of XSCALE in North America. And what does that mean? I don't really know. Glenn, what does it mean to be a steward of XSCALE?
I was going to ask you the same question, and in fact, so we're not going to get too far on this one.
Okay, well, I think from my understanding, a steward is someone that promotes that is knowledgeable about the framework and promotes the theories, the ideas, the concepts, and uses them in a way that helps businesses and individuals accelerate their business agility, right? Their move to becoming a more exponential business. And so I thought in this first session, we could sort of peel back the layers of XSCALE and talk about what the letters mean. It's actually an acronym. And does that sound like a good use of our time?
I think it does. Why don't we start with the first one, X?
What is the X in XSCALE, Glenn?
It stands for exponential.
Exponential, right? Exponential business. And what is it about an exponential business you think that maybe people don't get, or maybe people do get? Either way,
it's a great question, and various people have commented that human brains don't really grasp the notion of exponential. We tend to think linearly, even though mathematically we understand what an exponential curve and what exponential growth is. We really can't wrap our heads around it, and we don't conduct ourselves in ways that would induce exponential growth. I have an example that I looked up. It's lily pads. Lily pads experience exponential growth. I'll simplify it a little bit for discussion. For the sake of discussion, let's consider that they double every day, and after 10 days, they will consume 100% of a given body of water. Obviously, they need nutrients, and I don't think they work well with a lot of waves, but they are an invasive species, and they do grow exponentially. So here's the key point. After 10 days, it's at 100% coverage of the body of water. Wow. What is it after 9 days?
I guess I'd say probably 80% or so.
That's kind of what I thought when I first came across this description. But mathematically, that does not make sense. It is literally 50%.
It's 50%. Right, that makes sense. Yeah. If you're doubling every day, then yeah, 50% would make sense.
And going backwards, at 8 days, it's only 25. At 7, it's 12.5. At 6, it's 6.25. And at 5, it's 3.12. So if you're looking at a pond and you were not expecting exponential growth, and you saw you had a bunch of lily pads, I'll have to get to that at some point.
Right. On the fifth day, it doesn't seem like a big problem, right?
Yeah, it's only 3%, but exponential growth in 10 days, it's going to be 100%. So applying this to business, where you can experience exponential growth of a product, is powerful and profound. Apple's one of the biggest examples of this, but you can think of a number of products. Certainly the iPhone, when it took off, was absolutely tracking an exponential growth curve, and Apple's revenue went up accordingly. Apple has had a number of products that have had exponential growth curves.
I think Apple is a good example in the 2010s, maybe 2005 to 2015 or so, where they did grow 2000 to 2015. Or so, where they did grow exponentially. Maybe a more recent example would be Tesla.
Absolutely.
Since 2011, right, where their initial growth seemed, in 2012. I don't think you would have predicted the position that Tesla would be in today. Would you agree?
I agree. And another interesting thing, and maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, is Tesla is aggressively expanding. They're taking they're profitable now. But they had 2 factories working at full speed last year. Now they've got 4 factories. They're still ramping up 2 of them, but that's exponential growth. They're going to have an investors day in a couple of days. It'll be interesting to see what they're going to be doing for next year. But keeping that up, like you can't keep that up forever, but they certainly are on the steep climb of the exponential curve. which would bring us to S curves.
Right, and this chart here kind of displays it, visualizes it from 2012 all the way to 2021. This stops in 2021, the end of 2021. And actually, last year, 2022, I think they delivered 1.6 or 1.3 million vehicles. And so you can see that, I don't know what they're going to deliver in 23, and certainly there's more of their vehicles that are going to be built and more models that are going to come out, more factories that are going to start being ramped up into production. And so you can see that, in 2012, it's really hard to see how Tesla would attain the position that they're in today, right? Because humans don't get exponential. When we're living in it, it's hard to see that the growth, because it seems so incremental at first, but then when you start to compound the effects of that growth over time, it really makes a huge difference.
There's a key point which we alluded to a few seconds ago, and that is an S curve versus an exponential curve. The lily pond example, it is pure exponential until it hits the wall and it's 100%, and then it stops dead.
Well, that is an S curve as well, right? When the capacity of the environment fails to allow future growth, that's when the growth tapers off and may even fall because something new comes along, or the lily pads have no more nutrients to draw from, and they start to die off.
Exactly, and this happens with a product when it reaches saturation. So it starts slow, goes exponential, and then it tapers off, forming a rough S. And this is a critical point. The typical urge, the human urge, would be to start taking some profits because we know this isn't going to last forever. That's not a good plan. Try and start your next product, look for your next exponential growth so you can have another S curve and stack it, but shifted time-wise, on top of the first S curve. So you can continually grow your product and recognize that products will become obsolete at some point. The iPhone has done quite well, but it's not experiencing the growth that it used to. But
no.
Apple needs to come up with new products. There haven't been any quite as spectacular as the iPhone, but they have been doing quite well with AirPods, for example. But this is the challenge for business. Don't rely on your past product. Of course, keep your costs moderate and continue to improve it, but look for the next great thing so you can stack the S curves and grow exponentially.
Yeah, this is something we talked about in another video on disruption, and how disruption, you need to be, as an organization or an individual, you need to be thinking about how you disrupt yourself continually, right? Before someone else comes in and disrupts you. Like, so for Tesla, it may be a competitor that they don't see at the moment, right? That's going to come in and disrupt the technology that they've built their whole industry, their whole EV business on, the lithium ion battery. And maybe someone else comes up with a different battery that has 5 times the density and 1/10 the cost. And that would totally transform and disrupt the business model, make EVs so much cheaper, and put whoever this is in a much better competitive position. Mm-hmm. And so to your point, it's about, as for an organization, it's about staying ahead of that curve, staying ahead of this S curve, understanding where you are on the S curve, and developing new products that could potentially disrupt your old products.
There's a famous quote from Steve Jobs. Our products are going to become obsolete at some point. I want to be the person making them obsolete, not somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of the would you say the for the X in XSCALE and exponential business, right? So we kind of established what that is. It's a business that is continually looking to disrupt themselves. They are looking to stack these S curves one on top of another to achieve exponential growth, right? Maybe even to the point where they're cannibalizing products that they developed before, right? So like the Apple did in the 2000s with the the iPod?
Yep.
Right, and that was sort of cannibalized by the iPhone, and yep. iPhone never really got cannibalized. It's just the product was matured. It kept getting better and better and better.
You're kind of hinting at an important point here. The rate of change in the marketplace is accelerating. So you may have been able to get away with this, 10 or 20 years ago, but you're much less likely to get away with it today with not being innovative, not bringing out new products
Mhm.
frequently. Long established companies are going bankrupt. The average life expectancy of companies is shrinking. So it's now a business imperative to be looking for these kinds of growth opportunities. Sitting back and cutting costs is a formula for irrelevance and bankruptcy, in my humble opinion.
So what would you say is something companies should be doing rather than, focusing on bottom line profit, which unfortunately the quarterly investor cycle kind of drives that, right? How much profit are you generating?
You're right. You have to make money. It's a business, not a charity. But it's critical, in my view, to focus on top line growth rather than expenses. As long as you're growing your top line, the bottom line will take care of itself. Now, I'm not suggesting you be reckless and let expenses go crazy. You do need to be reasonable about your expenses. But the focus, rather than on cutting expenses, should be on growing the top line. And
Certainly, there's history of companies doing this and doing quite successfully. And Amazon grew with very little profit, but grew tremendous. They grew their top line because they were entering new markets. They were squeezing out competition, right? They really kind of wrote the book on that. They did that really well over the last 20 years. And of course, they came up with new products like AWS, which is their bread and butter right now.
which is extraordinary. There does seem to be, at this point in 2023, a fad, and that fad is layoffs. Of course, you have to protect your bottom line. I'm particularly concerned about Google. Google is making a lot of money, but they had a massive layoff. That is going to go and hurt morale, hurt psychological safety, and people are not going to be taking bold risks and trying to come up with new ideas because there's a climate of cost cutting, and that's not the kind of mindset that you want to be in a company. You want to be when things, of course, you have to watch your expenses, so curb hiring perhaps, but maintain morale by dialing up the innovation and resist the urge to go and cut costs.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think the focus should be to sort of analyze where your bottlenecks are, remove those constraints and free up more time for innovation activities, for a company. We're talking a lot about big companies, Tesla, Google, Amazon. And these, of course, are in the news. They grab the headlines because of the numbers of people that are being laid off in the past several months. Well, how does this apply to the smaller business? The $100 million company, the $50 million company, the $10 million company versus like these behemoths that are generating trillions of dollars in revenue and billions of dollars in profits.
I think this applies actually more to the $100 million company than to the multi-billion-dollar company. It is hard, and Apple is actually experiencing this. When you're the size of Apple, it is hard to experience exponential growth. It is going to taper off. Theoretically, you could have multiple stacked S curves happening concurrently when you're as big as Apple, but it does get hard when you get super massive. But this is absolutely relevant to the $100 million company, and there's many cases where companies that are around that size did experience exponential growth and go from 100 million to a billion or 2 billion. It's more challenging when you're 3 and 4 billion to go to 10 or 20 billion, but absolutely this is relevant to the $100 million companies. No question. In fact, more relevant.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's my point. So we think about Tesla and these other companies. Tesla still has a long way to grow. Amazon, don't know, right? We don't really know about Apple either. They've become more established, and they're trying to protect their market niche and continue to evolve their products so that they keep the people that they have in their ecosystem. Where smaller companies are scrappier, they're smaller, they can focus on top line, they can focus on new product development, they can focus on stacking the S curves, if you will, and attain a level of exponentiality.
I'd like to go back to Amazon. I thought you made an excellent point about Amazon Web Services, AWS. They make more money from that than they do from their warehouse, but people don't even know about that.
That's
so
right.
That's the kind of mindset that Amazon needs to maintain. They've changed their CEO recently. Hopefully that culture will continue. But there's a perfect example. They were in the billions when they had the warehousing business, the Amazon.com website, and then they came up with AWS. And they just need to do that again. It's out there. They just need to find it.
So in terms of a smaller company, how is the X and XScale? What are some tangible ways for a smaller company to experience exponential growth, or some tactics, some things that they can start with?
This can also happen. We've been talking product, but this can also happen at the team level. Typically, when an organization brings in Agile, I've seen this many times, that somebody does a little experiment. They think it's a great idea. You get leadership buy-in, and then there's a mandate to go and train everybody and get everybody to switch over to Agile or whatever this new way of working is. And invariably, what happens is there's a big push. And then, oh my goodness, I still have to keep the lights on. So the follow-up support doesn't happen, and the training tends to taper off, and maybe a few keeners apply it, but you're not seeing an exponential adoption. Here's another opportunity to do exponential adoption. Rather than focus on a train everybody approach, get a really good cross-functional team, build them up with proper support from business, from production, from operations, all the way through the value stream, well supported with executive support. Get them doing something, get them to deliver, but keep it in a fairly short time box. And then at the end of that time box, look for another opportunity to do the same type of idea. Bring in more people and split the original team. So instead of having, for the second iteration, instead of having one team, you have two teams. Now, you might want to go and play with the time box. You might want to have a second time box, but at some point, the team is going to be functioning. They're going to be delivering, and the key point then is to split the team. Yes, this will be disruptive for the team, but it's no more disruptive than what you did in the first place, except now you've got two streams going.
Right, and less disruptive because at least you have some experience built in. So the new team has some people that have been through it, been there, done that, and they can help the new members get up to speed. And the old team, of course, they're going to be doing the same thing. And so the disruption that they go through will be minimal. The trough as they build back up to a high performing team will be less so than trying to train everybody at the same time. And so I think what you're saying is, rather than apply a linear approach, and I would say the full scale, large scale transformation, let's train everyone, is more linear, because you're training everyone and you're not able to give adequate time and attention to just doing it right with one team or a small number of teams, right? And the way you're describing is, let's start with one and then build up to 2 and then 4 and then 8. And of course, then you have a self-propagating transformation in place.
Exactly. One of our colleagues in XSCALE has done this up to 16 teams. When you got 16 teams going, I think that the organization can run with it. But the critical thing is to nurture these teams and get them good and strong, and then split and reproduce, just like the lily pads.
Right. I agree. And we at Agile Meridian, we're starting something called the disruptor method that sort of leverages this type of thinking, where we're going to be applying this type of approach, the self-propagating transformation approach, to building up a leadership team, or what we are calling a catalyst team. And we work with them and we build the capabilities, and then we will help them sort of spread that to the rest of the organization by either splitting or some other mechanism. So
I think you brought up a critical point, is you train the client rather than you come in and do all the work. That's very powerful.
Yeah, I think it's more effective as well, right? Because we from a transformation perspective, you want pull, you want demand. It shouldn't be something that's pushed from the top or pushed from the side, or it shouldn't be something where leadership says, yes, we want to do this, and let's spend $10 million, get some consultants in here and they will do it for us. It doesn't really stick, right? Because it's not fully and wholly embraced by the people doing the work. And so the X in XScale really applies to exponential thinking. And even though humans may not get exponential, I think humans can appreciate the math in it, right? And so if they can appreciate the math in it, then people in organizations, either individuals or teams, can start to think about how they can apply exponential thinking to the way they design their products, the way they budget, the way they train, the way they do all of these things.
Yep. Rolling out a new initiative,
That's right.
on the exponential model, not the linear model.
Exactly.
Given,
Sorry.
I was just going to say, the rate of progress along that curve over time will vary based on the product, based on the team, based on the capabilities and interest and the psychological safety of the team. But be patient, meet people where they are, and let them pull in the change at a rate that they feel comfortable with, and wonderful things will happen, both to the team and to the bottom line.
Right. All right. Awesome. Any parting thoughts before we sign off for this episode?
I think we're at a good place, and let's continue with this exercise. And next time we'll talk about the S in XSCALE, which is simple design.
That's right. And so it's, I won't say any more because we're going to talk about it next time.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Great.
Thanks
Thanks for joining me, Glenn. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.